Hello everyone and welcome to New York Empoleon's Week 8 Team Builder of the PBAL. We are here this week taking on the Solihull Samurott, coached by Cyan Salamander. And if you have not seen him, go check his channel out, and link is in the description below, as are all of the coaches from the PBAL this season. We managed to pick up our biggest win of the season last week, and that's a really big deal, but we haven't clinched a playoff spot yet. We still need to we have work to do, so let's try to get this victory. And this team, honestly, is possibly the scariest team I have faced all season in terms of the matchup that I have. It is terrible. Oh my god. So let's get into it. Let's not stall anymore. His team is Jolteon, Alolan Ninetales, Cobalion, Victini, Flygon, Tapu Fini, Venusaur, Sableye, Armaldo, and Torkoal. Sun team with the Hail aspect, so therefore has Veil, and got the Venusaur, which really does threaten my team. Victini in Sun is just a nuke. He's got Fini to prevent status. I mean, this team is a little terrifying, I'm not going to lie. Like, prepping for it was difficult. And we'll start off with the first thing to note. Something that I think is important about this team is that my Dragapult set has both Hex and Shadow Ball. And you might be saying, why do you have both Hex and Shadow Ball? That seems redundant. Well, part of it is that I don't know if I'm going to be able to get the status off because of the Fini and how easily it is going to switch into anything going for status. So Shadow Ball could be more powerful, but Hex also could be more powerful. The other thing is he has no ghost resists on his entire roster. And you'd think, oh, Dragapult should just win then, right? And on some level you'd be right if I knew how to use it, but for some reason in all of my prep this week, I could not figure out how to make Dragapult just kind of auto win. Thunderbolt does a little bit more damage to Fini in the event that I need it to do, like a little bit more damage to Fini. And then Sucker Punch is there because a lot of the time I end up with something like Victini going crazy with either a Scarf or with a Flame Charge boost and going to outspeed me. And Sucker Punch just gives me that little bit of oomph to get through that Victini, especially after a couple rounds of Stealth Rock. So Sucker Punch was just useful, again, as just like a catch-all Victini is a problem kind of thing, or maybe the Venusaur gets like hammered by a hit but manages to just hang on. Sucker Punch will allow me to get out of those sticky situations. Otherwise, I'm spamming Shadow Ball and Hex. I have the Spell Tag to make my Ghost type moves do more, because honestly, it's just try to spam as many Ghost type moves as possible. There are 0 Ghost resist on my opponent's roster, and this is one of the best Ghost types in the game. And again, you'd think that would be an easy win, but it really hasn't been. There's way too many checks to this, including, but not limited to, Scarf Ninetales, Scarf Victini, Scarf Flygon, or Dragon Dance Flygon. Any Tapu Fini that's sort of especially defensive can cover this. Sableye can take a hit pretty easily and dish out a lot of damage with a foul play. So, like, there's so many checks, but I do like spamming Ghost type moves, and hopefully that does a lot of work. Next up is my Nihilego this week. This thing, actually, just a little bit of background about Nihilego here, has managed with last week's Wonder Room antics to get up to 13 kills this season so far, which is insane. It's only been 7 weeks. It has 13 kills. And the most kills I've ever gotten with him on in a single season is 15. So keep an eye out. If Nihilego managed to get 3 more kills over the last 3 weeks of battles, it will surpass the leader for most kills in a single season all time. For me, at least. Which is kind of cool. But anyway, Thunderwave, Fini switches in, but at the same time, Fini doesn't switch in, so I'm hoping Thunderwave will be able to be clicked, because Hex does so much more than Shadow Ball with the Dragapult. And I thought about putting Hex on this as well, but opted to go for the Psychic because I really wanted to hit the Venusaur just in case. I know I don't really want to take an Earthquake or an Earth Power super much, but at the same time, just having an option to hit Venusaur in the worst case scenario, especially if there's no Sun Up for some reason, is super nice. I'm Power Herb Meteor Beam because getting to +1 special attack is super great, and I'm plus Speed Nature so that I can get the speed boost, so that I can outspeed things. Like the Cobalion, if I can get a kill off, or the Jolteon, if I can get a kill off. But more importantly, like Scarf Victini, and if I can get 2, I can outspeed Venusaur and Sun. All good things. And again, if the Fini comes in, then this is not my switch into Fini by any stretch of the imagination, or it can be, but it really isn't reliable. And Sludge Wave just can hit it on a switch in if you think that he's going to predict a Thunder Wave. But this baits in the Cobalion, so I'm hoping that by baiting the Cobalion, I can get the Thunder Wave on that, and then be able to use that para later on in the game with a different mon. Like the Swampert, which actually has a phenomenal matchup this week, despite it being a Sun team, and despite like a Hail with Freeze Dry and Sun team with Venusaur as the main sweeper. Somehow this ended up being my star player in all of my prep this week. This was the set that I spent the most time on. Roar, Earthquake, Stealth Rock, Flip Turn. Flip turn was sort of like, could have been liquidation and I would have been okay with it, but it's really nice to have the utility to switch out. Stealth Rock is super useful to find where the boots are and eliminate them later on in the game. Roar is mostly for Calm Mind Finny, which is such a nuisance for my team. It is absolutely terrifying. Being able to spam Earthquake against everything not named Flygon is great as well, and it does a lot of work. I'm not bringing the Rillaboom spoiler, so I do have access to full power Earthquakes. I'm not attack invested. I'm max defense just to take hits from things like the Flygon or the Victini going for V-Creates or the Cobalion spamming its stabs on the physical side. So I am going to be max defense, not a lot of attack investment, but there is just not a lot of switch-ins to Earthquake, and it can potentially 2-hit KO Venusaur with Rocks up, so that's really nice. And otherwise, just hits things hard. And if the Flygon is there, and I really do want to switch out and like use the flip turn to hit the Flygon as well as get myself into something more apt to handle it, that I can also give myself the opportunity to do. And if Finny is getting out of hand, Roar can get rid of it, which is super useful and can get some Stealth Rock chip on the next thing as well. Next up is my Emolga, which is a switch into Tapu Fini potentially. Encore, Nuzzle, Defog, U-turn. Defog and Nuzzle actually pairs really well to getting the para off on his roster, since Defog gets rid of the terrain now, and Nuzzle can then 100% of the time get a para, which is huge. Encore is really good, again, for like Calm Mind Finny to be able to defog it and then nuzzle it, things like that. Or to Encore like a Flygon that thinks it's safe going for a Dragon Dance, just go for the Encore and get that Flygon choiced into whatever it's locked into. Or potentially, if he's not Scarfed and he goes for like an EQ, and I know he's going to like spam U-turn or Dragon Claw on the switch into my Emolga, taking the EQ. Encore, it's stuck into EQ, and then I have a free chance to nuzzle because he has a choice of whether he wants to go into something that's going to take the nuzzle or if he wants to stay in and do nothing to my Emolga. So, honestly, really solid support set this week. I actually really liked it. At first, I was not sold on it, and I really didn't have a great set in mind, but figuring out that it had Encore actually really made it into a much more viable mon, in my opinion. It's max HP. It's not really attack invested at all because it's not really going to be doing a ton of damage. It's really just utility to spread that para more reliably than anything else on my roster because of the defog access, as well as get rid of the Veil, the Rocks, anything that my opponent decides they want to set up. Next up is the Gardevoir. Gardevoir this week's going to be rocking Imprison, Calm Mind, Psyshock, and Moonblast, and has just enough speed to outspeed an uninvested Finny, as well as some bulk to be able to take hits from it. Imprison with Calm Mind and Moonblast can stop a Calm Mind Finny from doing anything but clicking Surf, basically, which is super nice. And Psyshock is going to be able to hit it if we do end up in a Calm Mind war. So this is one pretty reliable switch into Finny. Moonblast is actually pretty good against the roster. Psyshock would be basically perfect coverage except for the Sableye there. But the problem is this does bait in the Victini, and I don't have a ton of switch-ins to the Victini. So I do have the surprise with the Rindo Berry on the Swampert that I can take one hit and basically kill the Victini if the Victini stays in to try an Energy Ball on it, but it's a risky switch-in anyway, because if he predicts that, goes for the Energy Ball first turn, then I die on the second one, and I really have to be careful with that, because Swampert is so important to my game plan. So Gardevoir, I'm a little frustrated that I couldn't fit Shadow Ball in the set, and not just bait in the Victini and let it in for free, basically. But if rocks are up, then I'm okay because it takes 25% from rocks. Plus, after a V-Create, if it does manage to kill my Gardevoir, which isn't a sweeper this week, then I'm going to be able to switch into something like the Swampert, which can potentially outspeed depending on if he's Scarfed or not, and just spam Earthquake from there. So I'm hopeful this does work, even though it baits in the Victini, and the Victini can basically one-for-one whatever it decides to go for. Because of Swampert's access to Flip Turn, I might be able to keep... Wow, that was redundant. I might be able to keep Swampert around long enough to actually beat the Victini in the endgame. And lastly, we have the Durant. I needed a little bit more priority. First impression, we got the wide lens because I was missing moves all left and right. Stomping Tantrum, Iron Head, and Superpower just gave me basically full coverage for the roster, at least neutral on everything. First impression is really good, again, for things like the Victini or the Venusaur that are getting completely out of hand, and I just need something to be able to answer them. Stomping Tantrum is really good against things like the Cobalion, and if I want a little bit more power because Stomping Tantrum is just not quite good enough, Superpower does cover that a little bit better. Superpower also manages to cover things like the Ninetales that I am a little bit more wary of going for like an Iron Head for, because the Cobalion might switch in, or like the Flygon that can resist other moves on my set. That said, Iron Head is basically the most spammable move on this set, and hopefully will be landing. I mean, it's an 88% chance, so fingers crossed, but hopefully we'll be able to land moves with this Durant, and it'll be able to put in the work it needs to put in. It has to be wary of things like Willow on the Sableye, as well as the Torkoal being able to tank hits from it pretty reliably, and the Victini switching in on it after the first impression threat is gone and being Scarfed and forcing me out. But otherwise, it's actually not a terrible mon, and it does offer me a good amount of breaking potential early in the game for things like the Swampert and the Gardevoir later on in the game. If I get rid of Victini, Gardevoir goes nuts, and if I can't get rid of Victini, then Swampert is super viable to keep the rest of the team in check, since there isn't really a great switch into it. Hopefully this team works. If I lose this week, it sucks because I lose my winning streak, but it's not the end of the world. We are still going to be in a good spot to make playoffs over the last 2 weeks. We just basically need to win one more game over these last 3 weeks to guarantee it. And even if we lose all 3, we still very well might make it. It's just not a guarantee yet. I will see you guys all back here tomorrow with that battle. Take care, everybody.